Are you a leader, manager, entrepreneur, business owner, or knowledge worker? Are you leading people or wondering how to be a better leader in your own life and work? If you are, then you can be experimenting better. Welcome to The Experimental Leader, a podcast that takes a look at the ways leaders are experimenting in their own work. Hosted by Melanie Parish, we dive into real-life conversations about how people might be using a scientist's mindset and experimenting in their work. Shift your leadership into something that works better. Join us on The Experimental Leader today.
Hello, I'm Melanie Parish. It's so great to be here with you live today. I've been thinking about my own leadership, and today is Valentine's Day, and I have this lovely box of chocolates that my husband gave me. And I was thinking about relationships and how relationships are kind of like a box of chocolates. And like, not to get lost on like Forrest Gump and the box of chocolates, just, I'm just going to say that. But it is interesting how when I open a box of chocolates, I look and I go, oh, that one looks good. And I don't know about that one. And there's some, sort of thinking of that's good, that's not good, that's, whatever. And I think in relationships and in business work relationships, we sort of do that too. We're drawn to one person over another. And sometimes we're drawn because of our sameness. And there's value to the entire box of chocolates, the diversity of the box of chocolates. Even if it's just what each chocolate shares. So for me, I'm not particularly drawn to the white chocolate, but my son loves them. So I just give them to him and he gets joy. And that makes me think that how we share the value that each team member brings with others, how we illuminate what they share, how we amplify what they share might speak to someone else on our team. So what might not speak to me might speak to someone else. How we value everyone for who they are, how they're different, might actually help someone else see something or help someone else have a new idea or have something different come to mind that can help take our work and our process forward, or just have our feelings be important. I do a lot of work with personality profiles, and differences are so powerful on teams because they help us see our customers and their differences better. They help us come up with different ideas. They help our products have more breadth. So I've just been thinking of all of that. And for Valentine's Day, it's sort of, how do we spread the love? So my challenge to you this week is how do you look for difference? And then how do you amplify that difference so that you spread that difference into the world? How do you look for the power of others and then help amplify that difference so that that difference can impact the world in a better way? And I am super excited about our guest today. Our guest is Guillaume Wiatr, and he is the author of Strategic Narrative, a simple method that business leaders can use to help everyone understand their business, get behind it, and believe in it. His company, MetaHelm, guides CEOs, founders, and business owners of transformative companies to align teams and accelerate innovative adoption. I am super excited to have him here. Guillaume, welcome to my show.
Melanie, how are you? I'm ready to experiment with you today.
I'm ready to experiment with you too.
Yeah, thank you so much. And happy Valentine's Day to you and your family.
Happy Valentine's Day to you and your family too.
Yeah. I love the box of chocolate. I got some this morning too.
I've been experimenting with being cranky about my Valentine presents. So
All right.
on the weekend, my husband brought me flowers and he gave them to me in bed, and
Uh-huh.
the water spilled all over me. And so I hollered and I was like, "Don't give me flowers in bed." And so I think he felt like I rejected his flowers.
Yeah.
So today I got another present because I think he thought I didn't like the flowers.
So he wasn't offended.
And so I thought, well, maybe I should be cranky about the chocolates. Maybe I'll get another present later. So no, but it's lovely to get Valentine. So, and you got chocolates too?
I got chocolates. They're right here with the card.
With a card. Oh, nice. Nice.
My wife.
And you have something for your wife?
Tonight, yes, I have a surprise.
You have a surprise.
Yes.
Oh, that's very nice. That's very nice.
I can't say what it is. She might be watching our
I know. I can't say. Well, I gave my husband a new bed sheet. So, I don't know if he was excited or not. Well, we're doing book club, and you were kind enough to read my book. I know from our pre-show chat, and we're talking a little bit about chapter 5, tools for an experimental culture. And I'd love to hear sort of what came to mind as you were looking at this chapter.
Well, so in this chapter you cover 3 tools, if I remember correctly, and I took some notes also on the side here to kind of.
Oh my gosh, you're so organized! I love it. Thank you.
Hey, that's my job to get organized. So,
so
I gotta walk my own talk here. Yeah, they're not in the right order of your book, but the Kanban, the Gamba walks, and the experiment kata. The last one, the Kanban boards, where I know this tool and have known this tool for a very long time. I was very influenced by this type of work, working visually, having a sense also of achievements with those tools. Not necessarily pushing through a to-do list, but pulling through intentional, joyful productivity. Maybe that's not exactly what Kanban is about, but that's how I interpret it.
I think that's a great description. And the difference between a push system and a pull system, I think, is the biggest importance of it. And I think you said, "Oh, I've been using these for a long time," which is true. Me too. And I didn't invent this. This is Toyota has used this. This is a Japanese tool. I just sort of listed it as a useful tool that sort of fits with innovation. And the difference, I think, between a pull system and a push system, if you make a to-do list, you have some feeling that you should cross things off in order. And the idea behind a Kanban is that it's a pull system, meaning that you should pull the most important item at any one time.
Exactly.
And you aren't governed by the fact that something's been on your list for a long time. You should always be doing the thing that's most useful.
Right.
You.
Yeah.
I think that I'm curious to hear, like, sort of what are the downsides to a Kanban that you've seen as a consultant?
So I'll talk about my downsides. I tend to create a lot of cards, Kanban. So let's make sure that everybody understands, because I know we're live here, and make sure we understand Kanban is a very simple system with columns, and the most traditional way is you have a to-do in progress, and then you have a third column of it's done. But you can have different variation of this, and move.
And people use like Trello or
right.
What is it, Atlassian, or they use Asana is one that you can use Asana different ways. You can have a list system, but you can also have a board, and you can set up your board to be a Kanban if you want to. That's great. Thanks for.
Right. And I'm from a generation and I started with a metal slotted board with little cards. So very, very, very tactile, very, very old school. But now, yes, I do use Trello on a weekly, with even daily basis to get organized. And so it's so the downsides are I can create so many cards because I want to do all of these things. Now I have this board to play with, and it's easy to split hair. like to break down your projects to in a too granular fashion, and so you get a little bit of overwhelmed sometimes. And another downside is if I've seen cards, and especially Trello now, in the digital form, measures the time that a card has not been touched. So it tells you, hey, this card has been here for 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. And in your mind, you go, well, shouldn't I be working on this? So you start maybe developing a little bit of the guilt narrative, so you may be careful with these downsides. That's about it. I don't have a lot of negative things to say about Kanban. They're really a good, easy tool that has been really popularized, I think, thanks to all the digital apps and platform that we use now. It's not rare now these days to find a Kanban functionality in a new piece of software that is not specifically designed for that, but it's an added benefit.
The downsides I would say that you haven't mentioned are adoption. Like if an organization starts to adopt it, it's hard to get a team to all adopt it. So then they run around trying to police each other about, oh, well, you didn't look at the Kanban, or you didn't update the card. And then the other is just like people will put all their cards on there and then not update it or not look at it.
Yeah.
Because which always has me go back to wanting organizations to put that board on the wall with the wooden cards, so that it's really there, visible all the time. I always have this dream of that, even though it doesn't make sense in a digital world, but it does. That functioned differently because it was so visible in the workspace.
Right. I think these are, I've seen those downfalls too. Typically the digital one, I set up reminders, you can communicate, but my experience was also very much in the pen and paper world, where I used to run a design studio where we had a Kanban on the whiteboard. Very, very scrappy method, but very effective. Everybody could see it. Everybody could see what was implied, what was moving, what had been crossed or ditched. So back to your question, your three tools here. So the Kanban I was very used to it. Now, one that I thought was like a aha moment for me was the Gamba walks, because I didn't know there was a term for the practice of standing up, literally or not so literally, but standing and going into somebody's world to observe and be the direct witness of what's going on the dance floor. The famous metaphor of the dance floor versus the balcony, but the dance floor refers to where the work happens, where things are happening, whether you are in a factory or in a software development shop or a retail space or a consulting office or an architecture office. My focus is with professional services firms, so I tend to think about those type of businesses first. But Gamba walks it was so refreshing to read about these in your book, because I thought that I don't know I believe it's because the way we structure our companies and organizations, we very easily put barriers, metaphorical barriers, and our narrative around how a company is structured leads us to forget that the best way to fix a problem, to look at a challenge and experiment with something, is to just get into doing things and taking a walk to where things happen. I thought this was a very very powerful concept to me. I didn't know it. I didn't know it had a name. But
it's one of my favorite Japanese concepts. And it comes from the Gamba walk is coming down from the factory onto the factory floor. But it's incredibly powerful for knowledge work as well.
Yeah.
And I find now that we have Zoom, it's so easy to see knowledge work. Show me what you're working on. Show me the marketing campaign. All of that is so easy to look at now.
So I want to share a couple story, because I'm really excited about this concept. The first one that I started sharing with you before the show is so I grew up in a family of entrepreneurs, and I was literally raised in a pastry and chocolate factory. On my dad's side, my aunt and uncle had a fine chocolate and pastry shop in the northern of Paris. And on my mom's side, my grandparents were manufacturing buttons for the garment industry. And so as a little kid, 3, 5 year old, I remember I was riding my little tricycle in the middle of those two businesses. So I was having my Gamba walks, I guess, but I was maybe too little to really understand the depth of what was going on. However, I could notice at the time that the Gamba walks was probably the innate way my relatives would run their businesses and solve problems. Mm-hmm. Like, my grandpa, my grandfather would, his little button factory had a floor with machines and a storage area and then an office area, and he would kind of move around between those 3-4 areas based on the needs. So that was striking. The way you described this was really like, what this is now. Today in my business, I have an app called Voxer, and I let my clients contact me pretty much 24/7. I don't give them a limit because I want them to feel that what we're doing is very experimental. And so when an insight or a question pops up, they should feel free to have a conversation with me and experiment with, feedback or something like that. So my version of this, 50 years later, is digital, and it's through an app that lets people just ask me question anytime.
I also use Voxer.
Oh, you do? Okay.
We use it both. I use it with my one-on-one clients.
Great.
We also use it in our Leadership Essentials program. And I love it because it's so fast. It's so topical. It's so both immediate, and also I'm able to respond at the, when I can. That it's such a powerful tool. I love it.
And it's fun too. It has this little funny sound.
I know. It's
just like a walkie-talkie.
Yes, it is very fun. And then the third thing, and I'll just say, is the Experiment Kata. And if anybody wants to get a copy of our Experiment Kata card, you can just send an email to melanie@experimentalleader.com, and we will send you a copy of that. And that's just a way to run continuous improvement on anything you want to run. And you can just follow the questions on the card, and it'll help you do that. And I want to get to you, Guillaume. And I want to learn more about you. How are you experimenting in your life and your business right now?
Well, my business by definition is an experiment. That's how I started it.
That's super cool.
Literally, that's how I started it. And now it has this. So it's my fourth venture, and this particular one is now a 6-year-old. And it looks a little more formal than obviously when it started, but I'm constantly experimenting with new launches, new offers. So I offer strategic narrative consulting through courses. So, well, let's talk about this. Courses. I experimented with courses, started in 2021 and then moved to another format in 2022. And now I'm experimenting with the platform in 2023. So this business being very much, I'm a solopreneur with a few people in the back end. I experiment a lot with myself. I test my boundaries too. But with my clients also, experimentation is front and center. This is how you build a strategic narrative. Most people think that a strategic narrative is a piece of formal content, whether it's a video or a presentation or a story that you write. And I turn them to the fact, I evolve them to the fact that it's a constant practice. It's something you experiment with constantly. A narrative is a living system. It's a living entity. It's open-ended versus a story. So just for you and for everyone here, to me, stories and narrative are two different things. People go, well,
great.
Wait, they're similar, right? Well, in some fashion, but stories are closed-ended. They have a beginning, a middle, and an end. They are like, unique entities. I told a story about something that happened in the past. A narrative is this ongoing conversation that you have with yourself or your team or your market or your clients. So it's really a practice. So that's how I help my clients experiment. exploring their own narrative and shaping it so that they can build better businesses.
And I read an ebook. Is that what it is? An ebook
Mhm.
that you have?
Yep.
Yeah. I read your ebook, and I think as I was reading your ebook, and I loved it, by the way.
Thank you.
I loved, as I was reading about the difference between story and narrative, I really saw the value of narrative, because it's like what a brand is made up of is narrative, because there's a future in it. Is that kind of the difference? Is it gives you the future?
Yeah. A narrative is so. Let me give you an example of a narrative. A narrative is something that we follow because we don't pay attention to it. Like, what's the narrative about? Say, let's talk about we say, oh, the narrative about society and the narrative about politics or education or leadership. There you go. And you talk in your book now. You point out very specific narrative things that are kind of normalized that we don't pay attention to. Like, a leader should know. That's a narrative, right? It's like, yeah, of course a leader should know. Well, wait a minute. Like, when you start challenging it, that's when you start evolving it. So that's when it's future focused, to your point. So if you're reading that mindset, a narrative becomes a really powerful tool for change, right? So stories have happened already. If I say I'm a storyteller, I told the story, and probably I rehearsed a few times, right? I manufactured it. I shaped it for a specific objective, right? Maybe it's about sales or about motivation, something. A narrative is happening now. Like what we're doing right now, we're fueling the narrative about leadership to evolve it, right? We are adding to the conversation. We're also fueling the narrative that it should be good to do that on social media and turn it into podcasts. Right? It's a very recent and really booming narrative that people have in their mind. Oh yeah, I'm a professional. I should have my own podcast. I should be on LinkedIn. I should write articles. Yeah. But so all of that is really, really good. It can help you propel what you're doing into the future and change things until the narrative now becomes outdated and toxic. It becomes irrelevant. It becomes not adapted to what we're trying to do. For instance, on planet Earth, we're obviously seeing climate problems, climate issues, and the narrative that I grew up with, which was consume. Energy is unlimited. You can fill up your gas tank as much as you want. That narrative is being challenged, right? We're evolving it. We're like, okay, what do we do then? We don't know. And that's when experimentation comes in to change the narrative. So, that's the difference I make between those two concepts. It's a different ways to look at this, but when you really enter that mindset, it becomes a super powerful tool for change.
When should someone, when do you work with someone? If somebody was thinking, well, this is interesting, I wonder if I should reach out to Guillaume. When should someone be talking to you?
Any day. But I mean,
what would they be experiencing that would tell them they were a good fit for you as a client?
Right. They would probably be experiencing something like, okay, I'm in my role, whether you're inside an organization or where you have your own consulting company, you're thinking, okay, I feel like I am growing either in a direction that makes my business very successful, but is not necessarily aligned to my mission. And I'm feeling that it's take a lot of energy. I'm not in love exactly with what I do, or the opposite. I have this grandiose idea and I'm going to change how, say, how women are supported in position of leadership, for instance. I'm just giving you a real life example, but I don't have a business that helps me get there the way I would like to. So it's either one or there. So your business can be successful and you're not aligned, you feel you're not aligned with it, or you're really aligned with this idea but it's not successful yet. So these would be kind of the two ways to look at this. Another thing is, I feel like I should talk about what I do more, but I am not confident to do it. That's a really important place to start. I haven't defined what I call my vision. And you talk extensively in your book about this, and I love how you shaped the first chapter of your book is all about the current state of innovation and why it's inevitable. You can't resist it, basically. And so when I read this, and like, oh, Melanie has an opportunity story. She has framed the opportunity that she sees and that she is inviting other people to seize with her through her work. And most professional businesses have not done this job effectively. They're kind of doing their work and they feel like there is a purpose to it. They feel like, yep, there is something out there, but I can't articulate it very well. And if I try, it's going to be very self-centered. I feel like naturally I'm going to start talking about my business and why my company is great. And actually, I don't want to do this because I don't want to sound like I brag. So
yeah, I think it's hard, right?
So I hope these are pointers that can help you identify that you need to work on your strategic narrative.
And what size companies do you work with?
So 3 kinds: large professional services organizations, large consulting firms, executive search firms, and you can look at I put all my clients on my website, so there's no secret here. Spencer Stewart, divisions of product companies like Microsoft has professional services through advertising, consulting, things like that. So these organizations typically bring me on because they feel like they're very established. Their processes are getting a little heavy. They need a refresher in how they do business in a more authentic way. A lot of the time, more meaningful marketing, because they have all those marketing processes that kind of gets them stuck into the corporate speak. And internally, also, a lot of leaders at that stage, companies tend to second guess their own leadership vision. It's hard for them to deal and manage the difference between their vision and the corporate vision. Then I also help what I would call boutique consulting firms, teams of say 3 to 5 people up to maybe 50 people. They're very rapidly changing, and as they grow, their narrative is going to become very disparate because they don't have the resources or the discipline or the know-how to really stay focused and aligned. It's actually the nature of these businesses to be very innovative. So they throw things left and right, which is great. But at some point you have to prune. You have to say, here are all the things we do, all the things we believe, and oh my gosh, it's a mess. So we don't differentiate anymore in our market, and internally people are losing steam because the work is not so exciting anymore. It's not so focused and easy to do. It's not repetitive enough. The third categories of clients I help are solopreneurs, and I have a program that I call Expert on a Mission, where I help them really connect their mission with the way they operate their business, so that their business is a business that is not only successful, but a business that they also love.
It's easy to lose that thread, isn't it?
Yes. It was my case. Those three things, those three segments, I would say, come from my own experience. I was an employee in large firms. I started as a solopreneur a couple times. I created design studios, and every time I could see the same patterns, like, where are we headed exactly, right? Like, what's really our narrative here in this firm, and what are we trying to say outside? It's not so cool.
It's so interesting to think about. And I hear all the time, well, you should tell more stories. It's like, well,
I hear that too. I hear that too, Melanie, and I think it's great, but I think it's also outdated. And in fact,
I think it's also confusing. Like, what story should I tell? I don't know what story I should tell.
It's like, do you want to talk about me, about you, about what am I saying? So it's that whole storytelling bandwagon is great, but we need to evolve the conversation here. We need to change the narrative about storytelling and say, okay, let's be a little more strategic and intentional. Why are we exactly doing this? And when I teach a course at the University of Washington to entrepreneurial students, and I start my course by asking them, okay, guys, what is a story for you in business? And you would be surprised what people tell me. Like they think it's exciting, they think it's interesting, but they also, many of them in the room tell me, well, it's a little bit like you're manipulating people, you're trying to fabricate the truth. I'm not sure I want to do this. I just want to be authentic and say in a normal way what is it I'm trying to pursue and why I think it's going to have an impact. So many people are very lost with storytelling. Pretty much, you can see all those books behind me. That's my research. That these are all pretty much storytelling books, and they all tell pretty much the same thing. It's all derived from the Joseph Campbell arc of, storytelling arc, which is awesome, brilliant. But how do we apply it in our context, in professional services, in a meaningful, authentic way? I think there's still a lot of things to be experimented here.
Where can people find you, Guillaume?
So I'm on LinkedIn very often. If you have my Voxer account, you can Voxer me, please do. But you can find me at my most simple is my company website, metahelm.com. And you will find my ebook available for free. I have an assessment. You can find out if you're building narrative power for your business in 4 minutes. And I am a pretty prolific writer and content creator. I publish a video almost every day and an article several times a week on this topic.
Wow, that's amazing.
Well, it's fun. I love it. So
that's amazing. Well, it has been such a pleasure to have you on my show today. And I've really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you, Melanie. I think your podcast is one of the rare places where we can really have candid conversations. And I loved your book. I think you've done such a great work at saying things humbly and with no bullshit, and just relate your experience in a way that is very valuable. So thanks.
Thank you so much. And I really enjoyed your ebook, and I really enjoy this thought of the idea that narrative isn't storytelling. I think it's really powerful, and I think it really lines up with lots of things like branding and personal branding and so many things that are like, we all know we should be doing them, but we don't know why and we don't know how. So I think it's really practical. So I really love the work that you're doing as well. So it's really nice to meet you.
Thank you for having me, Melanie.
If you'd like to learn more about how focusing on bottlenecks can transform your own leadership, check out my book, The Experimental Leader. You can get a copy at book.experimentalleader.com. I think you can magically transform your leadership by spending more time focusing on your bottlenecks and less time focusing on your challenges.
It has been great to be here with Guillaume. I think our story is so important to who we are as authentic leaders. It's important to share our stories as we lead others, because it's important for them to know who we are. It's important in our mentorship of others that we know that they know who we are and how we think. I also want to take a minute and invite you to check out my free webinar. It's at impostersyndromewebinar.experimentalleader.com. It's a workshop on imposter syndrome and how you can overcome it. I'd love to invite you to check that out. I can't wait to see you there. And I hope that all of this has been interesting as you consider your own leadership. Go experiment.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of The Experimental Leader. We hope you have found value in today's episode, because we're dedicated to helping you become the experimental leader you want to be. To access the show notes or learn more about working with Melanie, visit melanieparish.com. Go experiment.